What's up, guys? It's your girl Stacey Cake, your host for What's Hot, and today I'm here to talk about the movie Send Help. This movie was full of twists and surprises, not at all what I suspected, but I will say it left me floored and thinking a lot. So I'm here to explain the plot to you and talk about how this brought the gender war that we kind of see every day online to the big screen. If you like this type of content, make sure you share, like, subscribe, and comment, and let's get into it. So, Send Help, again, I feel like it really brought the gender war to the big screen. But what do I mean when I say gender war? So gender war to me is like this lifelong battle between the sexes, and today we kind of see it more so on social media where people are kind of arguing who is the superior sex kind of subconsciously by pointing out the flaws of the opposite gender. But you know, this movie kind of tackles this to me in a like comedic and very dramatic way. Additionally, Send Help shows how patriarchy impacts the workplace, but it takes it a step further. So let's next talk about the plot. Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien star in this dark comedic psychological thriller that had me in a rotation of laughter, cringing, and covering my eyes. Linda Little, who is described as a workhorse, is crushed but determined to prove herself after her new boss denies her a promotion she was promised by his predecessor. Instead, he gives it to his friend, who might I add is kind of a jerk. Boss Brad Preston condescendingly invites Linda on a business trip with a few of her male colleagues to prove herself, but all goes downhill when the plane crashes and Linda and Bradley are the only survivors. The two are stranded on an island, and it immediately becomes clear that Linda's survival skills are the only thing that's keeping them alive. Bradley, being the jerk that he is, temporarily humbles himself to be cared for until he notices that Linda doesn't really have any intention of getting off of this island anytime soon. He even tries to poison her with some berries and escape on a raft, but when that plan fails, she reminds him he's not the boss on this land. To make matters worse, spoiler alert, she kills his fiance, who he doesn't even know arrived to save them, as well as the tour guide that accompanied her. Later, he even finds out that she found a luxurious house on the island where she was getting resources from, set up cameras, and was hiding all of this from him in the meantime. The two battle it out. Linda wins, gets rescued, and becomes rich, famous, and fabulous. So let's get into how this movie tackles the gender war, patriarchy, misogyny, and a whole lot else. So first on the list is the fight between men and women to be deemed the superior sex. I think this one is kind of obvious as we look at how the battle between Linda and Bradley kind of develops in the office and then transforms when they get on the island. He obviously has a small opinion of women. He doesn't really see their value as much. This is kind of exemplified by the way he was treating a woman when he was interviewing her, and further exemplified by him giving a male who was incapable of doing a better job than Linda the role that she deserved. I think this movie also addresses how pretty privilege, or lack thereof, impacts a woman not only socially but professionally. Linda is seen when she's kind of like not at her best, kind of looking gray, oldish, tuna on the side of her mouth, all of those things. She is seen as disgusting. She is seen as unworthy because she isn't charming, but really it's because Bradley didn't find her attractive, as well as many of her co-workers did not find her attractive, despite her being a workhorse, despite her over delivering day in and day out and being deserving. Someone of her same age range did not see or value that. They were looking for a more surface level kind of appeal from her, and she didn't have that, and that impacted her professionally and ultimately led to her not receiving the position that she deserved. Okay, next I'm going to talk about how both genders can be manipulative. I think this movie shows that nobody is perfect, because every time you start to empathize and sympathize with one of the leading characters in this film, you see that, he is not as innocent, she is not as innocent as they seem. Their transformation of character isn't really what I thought it was. It wasn't this magical, oh, I'm a better person, but it made you think that they were changing. And I think this is highlighted by the back and forth that they kind of go through with Bradley trying to poison Linda with the berries after we think he's doing a kind gesture. The old him is still in there. He returns with the vengeance, trying to poison her. And then she seeks revenge by threatening to castrate him. That scene made me cringe so freaking bad. Oh my gosh. I was like, it's no way they're gonna let her cut off that man's ding ding. It's no way. And when you started seeing the blood splatter on her face, it had my skin crawling. But thank God that wasn't really what was happening. But I just think we see that a lot. And then obviously when she, spoiler alert again, kills his fiance and the tour guide survived, the boat driver, whatever he was, that came to save them. Like, she pushed them, killed them, and knocked them off a cliff. Insane craziness. Mind you, she kept them on that island that whole time and was also hiding so much. And it's kind of implied that she also killed her ex-husband, who was abusive. And this brings me to my next point of that the impacts of patriarchy and misogyny on women can kind of drive them to be villainized or to become these villains. And obviously men go through trauma too, and that's talked about with Bradley. But for the purposes of this movie, I think we had more examples of how it pushed Linda to become what she is, in this kind of survival mindset, doing whatever to survive. And she kind of lived that out on this island. It's talked about when she shared the abuse that she experienced with her husband in the last fight that they had, where he really kind of took it too far and she made him his last drink and gave him his keys. You know, it's kind of exemplified there about like how that was her first kill essentially. And then we see on the island when she kills the boar and it's bloody and it's crazy, and she throws the head down like it's a victory, and she's stepping into her strength. She feels strong, she feels powerful, and she even tells Bradley that I think I kind of like hunting, but ma'am, this was just a massacre. This is not normal behavior. We also see this dark side of her peak a little bit earlier in the movie when her jerk of a co-worker, Donovan, tries to take her seat during the plane crash. Linda took this fork and she stabbed him, and it was kind of like this like side of her you kind of didn't expect, but given the circumstances, I don't know about you, I kind of like brushed it off like, okay, like he been a jerk to her the whole time, this is a life or death situation, he kind of had it coming. But then it's kind of cherry on top when he's like on the sides of the plane screaming for help. His face is like deformed and injured, and he's screaming for help, and she shuts the window as the plane is crashing. So I mean, I think we kind of miss it because you don't really empathize with Donovan because he's been horrible every time he's on the screen. However, this was definitely a clue that Linda is not all of what she seems. She's not just this nerdy, quiet woman who works hard. My last point kind of is connected to my last 2 points, but I think it's important to separate it and highlight that being nice doesn't always pay off. And I think this movie kind of shows that in a sneaky way. Not even super sneaky, but again, it's so much going on in this film that I feel like it's a lot of messages that you can kind of miss, or a lot of sentiments. And I think whoever wrote this was definitely frustrated if being taken for granted, having their niceness taken for granted. And that's something I know I can relate to. This is exemplified again with Linda and Donovan on the plane. She tries to give him a helping hand during the crash. He returns the favor by literally saying, give me your seat, and trying to pry her out her seat to save his life over hers, which is the most unmanly thing you can possibly do, especially when in Hollywood we're used to seeing men kind of go head over heels a lot of times for women, and kind of like we're trained to think like men are supposed to lay down their lives for children and women and things like that. And honestly, today we don't have that. We don't get that attitude a lot from men anymore, and we don't get that. We see that in this film of what's more likely to happen in a situation like that. Not judging it either way, but just saying he was a jerk. That was a jerk move for him to ask her for help and then try to take her seat. And I think that was also symbolic of what he did in The Office. Donovan did to Linda in The Office. And then we see that again with her helping Bradley on the island, only for him to talk to her as if she's trash, she's disposable, when she literally kept you alive when you were injured and basically unable to help yourself. So yeah, I think those were the biggest points for me. This was a great movie. I think it had a lot of great angles. The close-ups were just really what made this movie stand out, especially, and also the comedic interwoven scenes, like not what I was expecting from watching the trailer at all. It was a lot of surprises, and the bounces back and forth with having you empathize with different characters in the film, but neither one of them actually being good people was crazy. But I think just seeing it play out, this was very well done. My only critique is that I think the scene from the final duel between Bradley and Linda to her kind of being rich and famous was a little abrupt. Yes, it was a good transition with the golf club, but it was a little abrupt to me. Overall, I will rate this film a 4 out of 5 flames. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you next time.